welcome to this week's book club episode for Star Wars Dark Disciple by Christie Golden. If you are unfamiliar with the series, we take a look at a Star Wars book a couple of chapters at a time, looking at the themes and happenings and goings-on. And if you're finding us for the first time, you found us at a great time because today is the last episode for Dark Disciple. But if you check out the description, you'll see a link to the beginning of the series and the other series that we've done, and it'll kind of give you a chance to check it out and join us back all the way at the beginning. But with that, let's dive into the end of the book. We're actually discussing like 5 chapters today, so 38, 39, 40, 41, and 42, although they were all pretty short and things move really fast, so I think it was better to kind of do this all in a go. I really want to focus more on the resolution of the book and how all of this comes together, but I want to look at that resolution in light of the chapters that we're about to get, because I think they fulfill that final point really well. So with that, just kind of thinking of this idea of where and when did the Jedi lose their way, this idea of that's been discussed through the whole book is the difference between assassination and fighting somebody on the battlefield, and just the cost that something has, the cost an action has, even if it seems like it's the best thing to do or the best way to handle something going forward. What does it do to you in order to do the thing that you think is right? So with that, we're going to look at chapter 38. We start with the Jedi's perspective. Anakin and Obi-Wan are looking at the Banshee. Obi-Wan doesn't want to fire on them because he doesn't want to kill them. Anakin says they have to stop them before they go into hyperspace. And Obi-Wan ironically thinks to himself of how they have to fight to keep them alive just to kill them. Obi-Wan at this point is really, really gutted at this idea of bringing back Dooku and Voss both for execution and how unlike being a Jedi this is. We hop over to Ventress's perspective. We're going to cross-cut between the two pretty quickly here, but basically what happens is they crash. Ventress tries really hard not to do so, but it happens. The Jedi are hunting for them. Voss and Ventress are on the run, on the move, and basically they're on Christophsis now and trying to get to a Separatist base because Dooku says he can take care of them there. The issue is that Ventress knows something is up. Something is not right. Things are not going according to plan, and Voss is not telling her anything. He's just asking him to trust her because he loves her and he's trying to do something for the two of them. She's still not sensing any kind of deception from him, but also doesn't feel like what they're doing is the right thing, that they should either just leave Dooku or kill Dooku and move on. So she's trying to rectify things not making sense. There's a lot of things that Voss has been saying throughout these last couple of chapters, things like he has to believe her, that he's got this almost like manic need for her to just go with him because he can't stop to think about or explain what he's doing because it's not going to make any sense if he tries. You just need to go with him on it, which is always a red flag. We cut back to the Jedi. Mace is telling Obi-Wan and Anakin that they have to take him out. They have to take Voss and Ventress and Dooku out. At this point, Ventress seems like she's complicit in whatever's going on, despite her pardon, and that they need to stop anyone who's in their way. Now, this is where I continuously take a little bit of annoyance with this book because it doesn't really get Mace incorrect. The book does represent, I think, what Mace would be doing in this situation. It just doesn't provide any nuance to Mace or why Mace would feel this way at all, which is fair because it's not a book about Mace. It's a book about Ventress and Voss and to some extent Dooku and Kenobi, and not about Mace. And I just feel like this is the role Mace has in the novel. This is who he's supposed to play as. This is how it is. This is what he canonically did. It's fine, but it is something that I feel like it comes to a point where this book is trying to ask a very specific set of questions and make a very specific point, and it's kind of funneling people's opinions or reactions into this one direct path in order to end the episode correctly. But in fairness, that's kind of what the show Clone Wars did anyway. I love Clone Wars, but sometimes it would really try to take this insanely nuanced thing and stick it into like a very specific camp because we all know how it ends. It's just kind of the nature of the beast, and I'll get more into that when we get towards the end. It's still constantly asking that question of what is the difference between execution and killing on the battlefield. Chapter 39, Ventress, Voss, and Dooku are at the base, and Dooku has a chance to betray them, and he doesn't. He could have just had them arrested right then and there and shot, and he doesn't. So Dooku really does feel like at least Voss is on his side. Dooku gets a call from Sidious. Voss forces his way to be in on the call because Voss's ultimate goal right now is to get to Sidious. Sidious sees him on the call. Dooku calls him his assassin. But at the end of the call, Obi-Wan and Anakin attack and they start taking down the base. And it's a kind of an ironic moment because Obi-Wan wants to stop. Obi-Wan feels like there's something really, really wrong about this whole situation. And Anakin is like, I'm not going to go against Windu's orders. And I'm like, yeah, Anakin, it's very convenient that now is the one time you will not go against Windu's orders. But Obi is really sure this is wrong. And this is interesting to me as well, because even if we get into the question of what's the difference between assassination and killing in the battlefield, and we get to the idea that assassination is bad, but killing in the battlefield is necessary, they're having a battle. They're attacking a base. Droids can shoot at them. So, like, literally, if you're going to kill Dooku, this is the place to kill Dooku, right? Because you're having a battle. Just because you so happen to track him from a ship that he escaped on, that when the Jedi captured him, like, Obi-Wan has this sense of wrongness, and he's very convinced it's the situation, but I think the truth is he's feeling the wrongness of killing Voss without trying to talk to him one more time and really getting at the root of this issue of why is there this darkness in Voss, and yet why is there still this sense of goodness? How can Voss do these terrible things and yet not seem so utterly consumed by the dark? And Obi-Wan knows it's wrong to kill him before they know what's really going on, and I think that's part of it. But I don't think the battle itself that is going on here is intrinsically wrong. But ultimately, the tower does fall, and the Jedi win the battle. We get to Chapter 40. Ventress has become gravely wounded. Dooku is also very wounded, but wants to leave Ventress behind. Voss won't do it. So again, even though Voss keeps doing these really terrible things, we see that he also continues to care for Ventress. He gives Dooku his own saber back, so he can carry Ventress. So again, we're seeing Voss really work with Dooku and trust Dooku, and that they have this partnership. Dooku ultimately gets knocked out, but Voss still won't talk to Ventress in this moment, which may be the right thing because Dooku may have been knocked out, considering he conveniently wakes up after Voss leaves, but Voss leaves Ventress to actually take care of Dooku and runs off to fight some droids, and that's when Dooku and Ventress have a conversation, and Dooku says how this is all about Sidious. They're going after Sidious. He's really turning a metaphorical knife in her, because Ventress is like, oh, we were going to do this. And he's like, we never were, because you were never going to be worthy. So he's really doing this to get to Ventress, but it's also kind of revealing to Ventress what's really going on. The Jedi can't get to our three characters because they're inside of this kind of vault, protective safe room, but Obi-Wan has a plan to set up a trap for them. And all of this leads us up to the big moment, Chapter 41, and this is the part of the book that I remembered. I just didn't remember all the bits and pieces that got us to Chapter 41. It's at this point that Ventress and Voss really talk. Ventress pulls him away, makes him talk to her, and that's where we find out how this all worked. Effectively, Voss did fall to the dark side and was consumed by the dark side and never fully came back, but Voss did all this while still loving Ventress and acting out of love for her, but then using that love to chase power and revenge. So Voss's new plan was to not just go after Dooku, but go after the Sith Lord himself, which is not a bad idea if you're trying to save the galaxy, but doing it in such a way where he's lying, he's killing, he's doing all of these terrible things, and he's using Ventress. And she understands that now, and she hits this point where she has finally let go of her own need for revenge, her own bitterness, her own guilt, and for one brief moment really actually goes into the Force in a way she's never been able to do before, because she largely knew the Force as a Darksider, and the Force gives her this clarity, this moment about what she needs to do. And it's at this point that we finally go back to Voss's point of view in the story. I've been saying how what had kind of made me suspect about him this whole time is we never go back to his perspective. We'd spent like half the book in his perspective, largely going back and forth between Ventress and him, and now suddenly we're from the perspective of all these other characters, not necessarily for the first time, but for such a sustained time, that we never see or hear what Voss is going through from himself. We're always in the position where he could be lying to us or manipulating us, and never really knowing what he has to say. And now at this point where he has finally told Ventress the truth, and Ventress is giving herself fully over to the Force, we get to see Voss again and really see his thoughts. It's at this point that Dooku attacks. He means to attack Voss for reasons, I guess, for not trusting that he's going to go with him to Sidious. Maybe he overheard the conversation, could see that he's about to lose that control. And Ventress, who's in her moment of clarity, who's finally able to make this choice, like seeing all the roads ahead, decides to save Voss at the expense of herself. And she stands in the way of Dooku's attack. As injured as she is, she can't withstand it. Voss and Dooku fight. Voss has Dooku at his mercy once again, but this time chooses to not seek revenge against Dooku, to let that go, and to go over to Ventress, who is about to pass on into the Force. And that's something that Ventress ultimately says to him, that you chose your love for me over your hatred for him. And that's something she's very proud of. And this is where they share their final moments together. So this is ultimately the end for Asajj Ventress's character, and it's really sad that we don't get to see this play out on screen, that it had to be relegated to a different medium. Not that television or books, one or the other, is lesser or more. When a character kind of comes from one medium and is really important to that medium, regardless of what it is, I like to see that character's story arc finish out there. But that said, this was the way we were going to get it at its time, and honestly, it may not have even made the cut with the episodes that we got in the final season of Clone Wars anyway. And so I am happy that we at least got this arc, even if it had to kind of leave mediums in order for it to do it. Ventress says kind of what I had explained up in that point. She could not tell that Voss had fallen because she was accurately sensing his love for her. And this proposes a very interesting question in this story, because so often people talk or think about the light and dark sides as two separate things. You are in the light or you are in the darkness, unless you're one of those people who think Grey Jedi are a thing, and the only Jedi who are Grey Jedi are Jedi written by Claudia Gray. Grey Jedi do not exist. So there's this idea of these two things can't be happening at the same time. But here we have somebody who is admittedly consumed by the dark side, who can still have a feeling of love, of this selflessness for her, and that they can exist in the same time. And I think it shows us something, that it's not so binary. You're not consumed only by light or consumed only by darkness necessarily. Maybe you are, but you don't have to be. But it's also not this Grey Jedi nonsense where you're basically a creaster and you just get to pick, like, cherry pick the Jedi rules that you like, but you just don't want to take over the galaxy or whatever. It's something else. It's that humans, or for lack of a better word, humans, sentience, existence, has so many aspects to it that you can be doing the wrong thing for the right reasons or the right thing for the wrong reasons. I think a lot of this book is about that, about are you doing the right thing for the wrong or wrong for the right, and really exploring that and showing how much your internal center matters, that there's not necessarily actions. Some actions may be more intrinsically evil or good. You know, there's a guy in a movie once built a whole island full of dinosaurs because he wanted kids to see dinosaurs, but then a lot of people got eaten by dinosaurs anyway, right? So sometimes intentions don't matter. Sometimes things are good ideas or bad ideas. That intention changes who you are on the inside, and that's something I really want to get at. And I'll get at after we hit chapter 42 here. But as Ventress goes, she says she goes to be with her sisters, and that Voss has to let go of her because it is the Jedi way. So we get to chapter 42, 42 being my favorite number, so I'm pretty excited. Voss has to face the council, and he confesses everything he's done. And he is able to articulate all of this until he hits the topic of Ventress, which is very hard for him. Obi-Wan takes over, and Obi-Wan basically talks about Ventress and what she did for the Jedi, and how he feels that she ultimately saved the Jedi. That she ultimately saved Voss, brought him back from the dark, brought the Jedi back from a point of killing, or assassinating Dooku, who got away with Sidious's help. Obi-Wan paints this really beautiful picture about who Ventress was at the end. That she didn't have to stay this evil assassin and Sith acolyte that she actually kind of became this savior for the Jedi and gave them a chance to still find their way back. Now, I still think at this point the die is cast. It's a nice idea, and it's something good for Obi-Wan and Yoda to hold on to as they continue on past the Jedi Order. You know, I don't believe that the Jedi had a chance to turn around by the time you hit this point, but that's something we've talked about elsewhere on the channel. Though I have to wonder what would have happened to Ventress if they had not done all of this. Not to say that it was a good thing, like the Jedi did Ventress a real favor or anything like that, because that's certainly not true. The Jedi didn't do Ventress any favors. The Jedi put Ventress in a really horrible position, and she made the most of it based off of who she was. But without these circumstances, would she have found her way out of, you know, she wasn't consumed by darkness, but she hadn't found her way to the light. And would she have if she had not been in a position where she met Quinlan Vos? And again, that's not to try to like gaslight the situation or say Ventress should be grateful for what the Jedi did for her, but rather to show that even really horrible circumstances can be turned to good if there is a will and a way in order to put those circumstances right. Vos does spend some time with Yoda, kind of shows that he's on his way back, and eventually is granted permission to go with Obi-Wan to bury Ventress on Dathomir. And I like that Kenobi gets to experience this too. Largely, he is there as babysitter for Vos because the Jedi are not going to be so easily fooled again, although I don't believe Vos is on the dark side again, but it wouldn't be wise to send him to this place of darkness without any kind of support. Even with their complete trust, it's still a hard thing to do. But I think it's good for Obi-Wan, who may not have had the romantic connection to her in this story, and may not have been, you know, this wasn't necessarily all about Obi-Wan, but he was a major character and player in the book, that he, as somebody who was a rival, but also a believer in Ventress, got to be there for her as they lay her to rest, and she does get to go home to her sisters. And ultimately, Dathomir and the temple on Dathomir accepts her back, which is a really nice moment. So I wrote down some notes at the end here of just stuff that I was thinking about when we hit, and some of the stuff I think there are very clear answers in the book, and some of the stuff I think there's not. But I just wrote down in the end how much of this was how much of this was the Jedi, what the Jedi did in their choices, and how much of this was war. What about something may be right but may not be right for the people who are doing it? And I say that because I've been talking about through this story, in something I kept bringing up is what's the difference between assassination and killing on the battlefield. And the difference is the act of choosing to take a life, and it's not even just the choosing to take a life, but deeming that a life is not worthy of existing. It's basically playing God. When one person is judge, jury, and executioner, that is causing that one person to put themselves above someone else. And it seems easy when one of them is the leader of the separatist armies who are causing mass genocide or, you know, resource stealing and just all sorts of horrible things, as a Sith Lord is willing to do all these terrible, cruel things. It's easy to put yourself above Dooku, but it's not that you are or not above Dooku, that Vos is or isn't above Dooku, that Obi-Wan or the Jedi as a whole are or not above Dooku. It's that even if you are correct that you are a better person than Count Dooku, the very act of putting yourself into that authority does something internally, and I truly believe that. And while I am not innocent of being hypocritical on that point, I'm not innocent of judging people in my life, or having maybe an unfair assessment of somebody. I personally try very hard not to do that, because I feel like even when it seems obvious, like, well, I'm obviously better than a serial killer. Well, when you say that, you're already trying to qualify the things you do. So that's the difference. When you are choosing to execute someone, when you're choosing to assassinate someone, you are putting yourself in the position of saying, I, be it over the Force, over God, over the universe, over whatever context, you know, we're looking at, be this Star Wars or real life, I am putting myself in this position of authority to decide something on this large scale, versus on a battlefield where you're really hopefully not making the choice for you, you're making the choice for others. This is something that gets brought up actually in Light of the Jedi, one of the more recent novel releases, to go how it matches up against a early current canon release, is it's not about the Jedi, and it's not about doing something for the Jedi, it's about doing something for the people around you. So if you're facing Count Dooku on the battlefield, and if you don't stop him, he's going to run through that door and kill 20 people. You are not putting yourself in a position of authority over Dooku. You're putting those 20 people in a position of maybe not authority, but importance. I don't know quite the word I'm looking for here, but you're valuing those 20 people's lives over the person who's about to go kill them, as opposed to valuing your own opinion of the person that you're about to just hit. And that's the difference. It's where your focus is. It's where you're putting your heart, where you're directing your feelings and your emotions. That's the difference between assassination and killing in the battlefield. And it's why I think that it's not wrong to believe that killing Dooku would end the war and save lives, because mathematically that's correct. You know he needs to die, because even if he's not currently engaging in battle, he could be sitting there. If you let him go, he is going to kill somebody somewhere, because that's who he is. But maybe it's not for the Jedi to do that. The Jedi are beings that are tapped into the Force, the ebbs and flows of the galaxy, and they have a responsibility. And on the one hand, you know, you would hope they'd want to get their hands more dirty than just pass off all the ugly tasks to somebody else. But on the other hand, they have a responsibility to keep themselves more in line with the light, because if they go, they could be the next Dooku in a way that a person who is not connected to the Force could be evil. Evil is not owned by Force sensitivity. The potential of what a person can do is different, and the ability to be swayed by that way is different. Contrast this to Desh's sacrifice, where he was going to use his stinger to kill Voss and go down with him. That was a Jedi deciding that somebody had to die, but the way he was doing it, he was willing to go with him. He wasn't saying that I am going to, have to live on, and, it wasn't really about Desh. Desh was giving up himself in order to kill his friend that he thought was the way he had to do it. Now, ultimately, Desh doing that just caused, his death and the death of another Jedi, and the way they could have ran, and all of this probably would have gone the way it was going to go. But what would that have done to Desh, knowing that he let his friend run off? Would he forever feel guilty for the deaths that would come later? Or would he be relieved that he could live on with his friend? That's what I'm kind of curious what you guys think the book is saying about Desh's actions and the actions of the little girl at the beginning, where she goes to kill Dooku and fails. Is it always that kind of singular killing that is the book saying that's always bad? Or is it giving kind of like a context it just couldn't play out for the sake of the story? I'm also kind of curious thoughts on Ventress's redemption and Voss's redemption. I don't like the idea of purely romantic redemption, because I think to say love is only romance really puts love in a box, and I'm not entirely sure that's even what did it. I think it was more this sheer magnitude of genuine, unselfish feeling, regardless of what that kind of love is. I think as much as Ventress did it, I think Obi-Wan's love for his friend, his compassion for his friend, helped him and protected him in a way that other Jedi would not have. I think Yoda's, maybe not love, but willingness to be open to what the Force is saying, even though he's kind of choosing to go down this darker path, is what kept this from spiraling entirely. So I think there's other aspects to it. I think that it's more than just they wanted to live together with a picket fence, but rather what's the emotion behind that, and why they would want to be together. Because it's ultimately Ventress brings him back, but says he has to let her go because it's the Jedi way. She brings him back to be a Jedi, not to, she saw a world where maybe they both could have gotten through it and been together, but both been dark, and decided that him getting to live in the light and her going and being in the light was the better course, even though they had those feelings for each other. And also, was any of this possible without someone's death? Star Wars gets critiqued a lot for always having redeemed characters die. And I don't think it's an unfair criticism, because I think watching a character live after their redemption is interesting. It's part of why I'd love to see Voss again, and to see how he copes after this. But I also think that when so much happens, there has to be a price in order for redemption to happen. And I don't think it can just be like, oh, I'm fine now. I think somewhere, sometime, there has to be some kind of sacrifice. Kind of look into real world philosophies that I'm more familiar with. Even the idea of Christianity, the idea is we are all forgiven because of Christ's death, right? Somebody still had to die. If you watch National Treasure, somebody has to go to prison, Ben. You know, there's always this idea of somewhere, somehow a price has to be paid, whatever you want to pull that from. And so, is it annoying that another female character died for a male character? Sure. Is it annoying that a really interesting character died when we could have explored her redemption at the end? Yes. But someone had to go to prison, Ben. And I think that there's room for those kind of real world conversations of why is it always the female character, or why can't we ever see this get played out? And those can all be really valid conversations to be had. But there's room for those valid conversations while recognizing that within the story, a price still has to be paid, and both of those can exist at the same time. And they don't have to undo or counter each other. That you can explore what stories could do with real world context while also exploring what the story does with the context we are given. But that's really what I have to say about Dark Disciple for now. And it was good for me to reread it because I actually had forgotten quite a bit of the twists and turns and how we eventually got to that end of the story. And the end of the story is a very poignant one indeed. As per usual, when we finish a book, I'm going to take a break from the book club for a while. I've been putting a lot of serious discussion in changing up the format of these. I'm going to assume that if you have come to the last video in the series and you're at the end of the video and you're still listening to me talk, you're one of the people who are really, really invested in this series. So that's why I'm going to put this here, because I want to talk to you guys. Because if you're the person who's still here and still watching and really interested in what happens next, you're the person that I don't want to lose if I change how I do this. So you're never obligated to say anything, but if you wanted to, leave me a comment here, find me on Discord or elsewhere, and let me know what you really like or what you would like to see more of. Not necessarily in terms of the next book to read, but how we discuss the next book. It would mean a lot to me because I want to know that I'm doing this in a way that's helpful for you guys. I'm thinking of some stuff, and I'll probably be putting some discussion of it on the Discord. So if you want to be involved with what happens to the book club after this, because it is going to change to some degree, just because my life has changed since I started doing this. I need to do it a little bit differently now. You want to be a part of that, hop into the Discord, talk to me there. Probably going to take a bit of a ways off. It may not even be till like May and Star Wars month before I start something up again, and I'll let you guys know what I pick, what we're gonna read, and the way that we do that then. But thank you all. Also, please leave me your final thoughts on the story as well, and follow us on the socials. Thank you guys for being with me on yet another book club journey.